Hey everybody, my name is Sadie Hartman. I am the Mother Horror on social media. I am the co-owner of the horror subscription company Nightworms. We send horror out to hundreds and hundreds of fans all over the place. And I am also on social media as Mother Horror. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, although I hate Facebook. So what we're doing today is a special treat for Nightworms fans. We're going to talk to a horror author who also writes in like tons of genres because he's the master genre blender, Rio Youers. And I'm really excited to finally get to talk to Rio because I've been a huge fan for a long, long time and have chatted with him over all sorts of different things, mostly over the book that wrecked me the hardest, which is Westlake Soul, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. But Rio, do you want to just kind of introduce yourself to the Nightworms fans?
Absolutely, yeah. Firstly, hello, and thank you. Thank you to the Nightworms, to the great Mother Horror, to the whole horror community, really. You've shown so much support and love over the years that I've been doing this, and deeply grateful, and I'm honored to be here talking to Sadie. And yeah, thank you so much for having me. I am a novelist primarily, although I do write short fiction, and I've been known to dabble in comics a little bit. I've written, I've written a few novels now, but I really only count 4 of them because they're the 4 that I actually got paid for, which is good. I'm not sure if you can count novels if you don't get paid for them. And they are Westlake Soul, Halcyon, The Forgotten Girl, and most recently, there they are. There's the stack. Most recently, Lola on Fire. And yeah, I mean, they do blend the genres a little bit. Halcyon and The Forgotten Girl were, paranormal thrillers, I guess you'd call them. Supernatural thrillers. Lola on Fire is a straight balls to the wall action thriller.
Yeah, it sure is.
No doubt about that. And Westlake Soul is, well, nobody knows what that is. It's sort of,
it's soul crushing.
It defies any kind of label. I think it's I always refer to it as a metaphysical fantasy, but some people say it's a horror story, and that's fine. Some people say it's just pure fantasy, that's fine too. Some people say science fiction because a lot of the the quantum science and stuff like that we delve into in the book that I know nothing about, by the way. But Westlake does, so thank God for that.
Yeah.
And yeah, he was channeling me through this book. You understand?
He wrote the book for you.
He wrote them. It says right the very first line: somebody somewhere is writing this down. I'm making it happen. And that someone was me.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so a few different genres, and I just like to have fun, and I hope the readers have fun too. So yes, thank you for having me. Great to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I was introduced to your work through Halcyon. The Nightworms review crew, before we were Nightworms, the subscription company, we were given review copies, and I had never heard of you before. And we got this, fancy hardcover edition. And, it's funny because the book cover doesn't really tell you much about it at all. It's kind of just this wake of maybe a speedboat or something leaving an island. And it just has this moon, which, it doesn't really tie into anything horror or fantasy or, it's an obscure looking book at first, but it did have this quote on the front from this blurb from Sarah Pinborough that I wanted to read. It says, a precinct exploration of domestic terrorism and the fears that currently grip ordinary people worldwide. Ominous and yet somehow full of hope, Halcyon shows that yours is a Kuntz or a king for a new generation. And that really is what intrigued me at first, because I love Sarah Pinborough. And then anytime, somebody is compared to a Stephen King-esque writer, always captures my attention. And I think unanimously our reviewers loved this book. I, for one, was a little bit blown away. It mixes together like a cult horror, also a coming of age tale with the two protagonists, the sisters. Was this?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they were sisters. And then also just like some kick-ass like fighting sequences and a villain that was really interesting with this backstory. I mean, I was really blown away. So that was my introduction to your work. And then when I posted it on Instagram, on Bookstagram, so many people were telling me about Westlake Soul. And so I do want to talk about that for a minute before we, cover Lola, your new release. But Westlake Soul, so many people recommended it, and I just hopped on Amazon and bought it. But then what happened to this book? Like, it went out of print or something, didn't it? Because people were scrambling for that.
Yeah. We probably shouldn't go into a long discussion about the publisher of the book and some of their practices, but I was having problems getting paid for the book, getting royalty statements on time, etc. So it'd been my I've been trying to get the rights back for quite a few years, actually, working really hard to sort of get them back, and they weren't being released. And then finally, ChiZine did acquiesce and give me my rights back, at which point it was pulled from Amazon and pretty much every other online retailer. You couldn't get them anymore. And that was when, I think it was shortly after that you caught on to it. And of course, everybody went, thanks to you. Beautiful review. I still remember it to this day. It wasn't even a review. It was terrific. It was beautiful. And read it on Goodreads if you haven't already. It's fantastic. I read it every day.
Stop. That's awesome.
No, it was great. It was great. I was like, oh my God. So that obviously got people scrambling for the book, and it wasn't available. And suddenly there were these copies popping up on Amazon of that, the old sort of ChiZine copy for $800-900. And I had when ChiZine gave me back the rights, I basically bought up all the stock that was left because I didn't want them selling it. And I had like 2 boxes, maybe 200 copies of the book. These were the last copies that were out there, except for whatever were on Amazon or eBay or other places. And I thought, well, I don't want people to have to spend stupid amounts of money to buy this book. I want this book to be read. I want it to be enjoyed. And so I offered to sign the copy and just give me $10. I'll sign it and I'll mail it to you. And it just went crazy. Everybody wanted a copy.
Yeah,
and that was thanks. Yeah, it was just nuts. Like I thought, my God, I might, if I can get myself 3 or 4 copies, that gives me enough to go to, to the pub at the end of the week and have a few beers. And my email just didn't stop. It was, you got money, you got ding, 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 just people on PayPal. And people were just sending me the money. It was like $10 for the book and $10 for the postage. And I couldn't keep up. And then I just had to start writing everything down and counting my books to make sure I had enough to cover it all. And it just went nuts. And I think that added to this, the frenzy that you started with your fantastic review, and suddenly Westlake Soul became very, very sought after.
Well, I mean, honestly, not trying to just, like sit here and blow smoke or whatever, but honestly, it fits into the category of the great novels of our time. I mean, when you read it, it reminds me of how I felt when I was reading like The Great Gatsby or Steinbeck's East of Eden, or, just these books that are very transcendent of genre. The character is just so memorable. The story just kind of, I don't know, it just breaks you apart. Like, I remember I was bawling on the couch and my husband came up to me and was just like, what is wrong with you? Like, I almost am like tearing up just remembering like that exact moment. And I've had moments like that. I was just talking about it when I posted the SST edition, which is right here. I posted this on Bookstagram the other day, and I was talking about moments where I remember where I'm just breaking apart over a story, you know, like Boy's Life or, you know, Lord of the Flies over Piggy's death, and just certain moments in time where I can remember exactly where I was. And I was sitting on the couch bawling. And it's just, my husband's used to it at this point. He's like, okay, your fictional friends are having a crisis. I understand. But yeah, so I'm glad the SST picked that up and more fans were able to get that beautiful copy and have it.
Yeah, that's like, it's the definitive edition. You know what I mean? Like even for fans who or readers who have the ChiZine book and have enjoyed it, like, you know, I would urge them to go out and get the SST Publications edition because it's so beautiful. It's got the introduction by Owen King, the illustrations by Vincent Sammy. It's the perfect edition of this book. I can't even myself look at the ChiZine version anymore, just because, you know, obviously some of the sort of associations with the publisher.
Yeah.
You know, but more over because it's it just pales in comparison to what SST have done with this book, which is it blows me away. It's just such a gorgeous edition. So I think for even people who've read the book and you own a copy of the ChiZine version, if you love the book, I think you should just go out and buy this SST version because it's stunning. It's really gorgeous.
Yeah, I totally co-sign that. And it's funny because I was just talking about ChiZine the other day with Ian Rogers and Craig Davidson.
Right.
Because
good guys, good authors.
Yeah, all you Canadians kind of got your you know, first books out or something. Like, I don't know, but like I read The Acolyte by Craig Davidson. That's not available anymore. So also Every House is Haunted by Ian Rogers was a ChiZine title too. So hopefully we're going to get some reprints of ChiZines.
I think a few of those ChiZine authors are starting to sort of recirculate some of their work. I know David Nickel has all of his ChiZine books out now with another publisher. So, you know, for their faults, you know, ChiZine did care about the genre, and they did put out great books, and they did introduce the genre to some really fantastic authors like David Nickel, Gemma Files, like Ian Rogers. And you know, it gave us all up here in Canada a good home to be for a little while. Obviously, you know, things went very badly eventually, but for a while there, everything was great. And you know, like I said, they really helped Canadian genre fiction on the map. And you know, regardless of how it all turned out, that's something I think we should be grateful to them for. And you know, I mean, Craig Davidson, he's got a career outside of, you know, the small press thing with ChiZine, very successful literary career. He's a fantastic writer.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Ian Rogers now is going on to do bigger and better things. He's big tour now, and just, you know, great. I met a lot of really good people through that scene, and it was just some great authors. You know, so hopefully they will all find homes with some great books.
Yeah, I'm hoping that as well, because there are some great books that I worked with ChiZine for a while, before I realized that things were going south. But I mean, worked with them in terms of like reviewing and getting review copies and stuff. They had a really great deal where I could pay for the shipping and they would send me any book I wanted. So it's kind of sad because I have a huge stack of books that I don't really promote anymore. But I'm hoping that I'll get to do that eventually.
Yeah, hopefully, it's kind of a strange situation to be in where you want to promote the author, but you don't necessarily want to be seen to promote the publisher's practices. You know, at the end of the day, the authors need the love, and hopefully they'll find, you know, new homes for the books, and we can all get back on the same page. That would be great.
Well, I mean, you have definitely moved outside of, you know, that arena of indie anyway. I mean, the only book I don't have is The Forgotten Girl. I don't know how I got skipped on that one, but like I partner with the publisher on that, so I might have to like ring that little bell or just go buy a signed copy from you. But I was just reading that you were a finalist for the Arthur Ellis Award. Do you want to tell us about that a little bit?
Yeah, that was for the Forgotten Girl. That was a complete surprise. It's a crime fiction award. It's a Canadian crime fiction award, quite established, quite a reputable award. I was actually living in Vienna at the time. I spent a year in Vienna, and
Wow, lucky
I
you.
yeah, it was fun. It was fun. My wife got a job out there at the God, I can't even remember. It's the I can't think what they call it.
It's the place.
The United Nations is what
Yeah,
it's
that's a kind of a big
called.
deal.
It's kind of a big deal. Oh god, yeah. So anyway, we went up there for you. It was great, and I think I found out about that award on Twitter. I think someone just said, "Oh, congrats on your award nomination." And
You're like, what?
yeah, this the Forgotten Girl is. I just happened to have a copy here because I just signed it for somebody who reader in England. I'm going to send this copy off to them. But it's set in America. It's set in New Jersey. It's very American. Not really. Well, there is definitely some elements of crime in it, but it's a supernatural thriller, not a straight crime. So I knew without doubt that I wasn't going to win the award. But I think I was in there with like Linwood Barclay and a couple of other really established Canadian thriller writers. It was just a thrill, honestly, a thrill to be nominated for something. Um, yeah, because the Stokers don't ever consider me for anything. The Shirley Jacksons
Heads
have
up.
never like yeah. There was a bit of a furore I think online when Westlake Soul didn't even get like on the preliminary ballot. A few people up in arms about that. I wasn't one of them, by the way. It doesn't really bother me at all. But yeah, so it was nice to be nice to be nominated for the award, and a little bit weird that my first real sort of prestigious award nomination should come outside of the genre that I've been working in for so long.
Yeah, well, I mean, like supernatural crime thrillers have their audience, I want to say. Like, anytime like Stephen King does something like The Outsider, everyone, it's funny because your crime junkies, your crime thriller people will be like, oh, I hate the supernatural element, but then your horror fans who are like crossover into the crime thriller will love it. And I think that that's kind of what you do sometimes, anyways, because Lola on Fire is definitely, a more straightforward crime thriller. But I mean, Halcyon definitely has kind of a little crime element with the cult and everything, and the domestic terrorism. But it has a supernatural kind of element to it as well. So, I mean, I think it's the crossover for horror. I think horror fans love those kinds of stories, at least in my opinion.
No, I think you're right. Absolutely. Um, yeah, like traditional horror readers do like thrillers, but that doesn't always work the other way around, right? Thriller readers don't always veer into they do sometimes, depending on the author, but you don't find many thriller readers who delve too deeply into, maybe some of the more well-known, well-established horror writers for sure, but you can go very deep into the field of horror fiction and come across some really wild, original, fantastical books that are certainly not in the mainstream, but by authors who certainly aren't known by traditional thriller readers. So there's a wormhole there that the thriller readers just aren't being sucked into, which is a shame because some of those, it's like I said, some of those fantastic lesser known books have some great thriller moments in them, and I think they would be enjoyed by a lot of thriller readers, regardless of some of the more horror-ish content, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that sometimes women thriller writers, I think their books are almost categorized as horror, or could be, or should be. Like Sarah Pimborough, who did the blurb there on
Yeah.
Halcyon. Behind her eyes is like it sure straddles the line, I
Oh,
think.
yeah, it does. It's she's got that supernatural thriller thing
Yeah.
down, like probably like nobody else. She's fantastic, but her background is horror novels. She worked for Leisure Books for a while. She did a few with them, and then she did books with Joe Fletcher, more sort of horror centric books. and she sort of slowly has moved more into the thriller market, and it's done. She's done very well doing that. And Behind Her Eyes was a stunning supernatural thriller. Yeah, really good.
Agree. So. Yeah, and Alma Katsu just has a book that came out called Red Widow, and that's a CIA kind of espionage thriller, but she also writes horror too.
That's right.
I mean, I really think that Lola on Fire, even though people have been talking about it being kind of a John Wick comparison, I think that that's fitting. I haven't finished it necessarily, this book, so you're not allowed to spoil anything for me. But I'm really enjoying it in the sense that it reminds me again of Halcyon, in that there's a lot of heart and a lot of family and relationships kind of bundled into this thriller. So I was wondering if you wanted to just kind of touch on it a little bit, talk about the writing process that you went through. It was like, were you writing this during coronavirus, or was this before and it just released during the pandemic?
Yeah, it released during the pandemic. I started that book actually when I was in Vienna, so that would have been 2017. And I probably spent the next 2 years or so working on it, including edits and everything. And I very consciously wanted to write a straight thriller. Lola on Fire is I think the first anything I've ever written that doesn't have some kind of supernatural, paranormal, unexplainable element to it. And that was a challenge in itself, but it was something I always wanted to try. And I loved every moment of it. It was a rush writing this book. And I love those action movies. I like the one-person army movies, like John Wick and Kill Bill and that kind of thing. And you watch these movies and you think, man, I'd love to be able to do that in a book, but it's not always possible to take that level of that ultra crazy level of action. Where John Wick basically clears a room with a pencil and a book and a 45. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. Whatever he's got in his hand at the time.
Yeah.
Because contemporary thriller fiction has to be more grounded in reality. The moment you veer into the extraordinary, you're going to risk losing the reader. So the challenge was taking that cinematic action that everybody loves so much, that kick-ass, balls to the wall, furious action, and put in the pages of a book. And I just can't. It can't be done. But the way I did it was to basically, hopefully, through the characterization and to make the characters more real, more believable, to give them stories, to give them feelings, to definitely fill the book with as much heart and emotion as you could without it becoming overly saccharine or overly sentimental. There are fine lines between too much action, too much sentimentality, not enough of either. It was definitely, and I didn't get it right first time. I'd sent the book out to my friends, Chris Golden and Tim Leber and Chris Ryle and a few others. And then Joe Hill, I'd sent the book to him just when I thought it was finished. And Joe's like, hey, you should really do this. And he sent me back this page full of notes. And I'm like, Joe, you're probably right. So
I love it.
Yeah, so that was great. And then I we sold the book, and then my editor for sure had plenty to say as well. And by the end of it, I felt that definitely we had this book that was very close to that initial vision of taking something cinematic and throwing it into the pages of a novel. It's a rush, it's a ride. It starts off with a huge action scene, it starts off with a big bang, and then we get into the characters and the story. It's called Lola on Fire, but it's not necessarily Lola's story,
right?
And I don't want to say too much, but the main protagonists in the book are Brody Ellis and his sister Molly, who has cerebral palsy, and they're basically on the run from some very bad people. And Lola is entwined in that, and they're running for their lives, and everything, basically the shit does hit the fan in a big way. It was just so much fun to write, really fun to get to know these characters, to spend time with them. It was one of those books where you're like, I'm probably going to be like in this novel with these characters for the next 18 months, 2 years, and just being really happy that you had such great characters to sort of hang out with for that length of time.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, because actually, I think fans should know too that, like you said, even though Lola Bear isn't like, your main protagonist, there's all these other people. I mean, the two kick-ass people primarily in this book are both women. So I think that people who love women-centric horror or thrillers will love this because you have an antagonist and you have a protagonist. Who are both like very feisty, strong-willed females. And the interesting thing too is the only other time I've really read a book like that would be Preston Fassel wrote a book about some like warring prostitutes, some like a woman who like wants to take out prostitutes on the street, and then like a very feisty woman advocate prostitute, and the two of them show down. And I was kind of thinking about that when I was reading Lola's. I was just like, man,
Right.
this is like kicking ass. I don't want to spoil too much either, because
Yeah. And it's one of those, and I seem to do this all the time. One of those books where it's really difficult to explain the book and to give a sort of fitting synopsis for the book without divulging spoilers or something.
yeah,
So
it's hard.
it is a little bit difficult, but it's. I like that you mentioned the two women protagonists. There's like 5 main characters in the book. The 2 male characters, Jimmy Lazzo and Brody Ellis, they're sort of damaged men, really. And then you've got these 3 women characters who, they're each so strong in their own way. You've obviously got Lola, you've got Molly, who's Brody's younger sister, and then we've got Blair Mayo, who's Jimmy Lazzo's protege, and almost a replacement for Lola in a way.
Yeah, I actually love her.
And she's feisty, and she's strong, and she's smart, and she's brilliant. And it's really it's the 3 women characters in this book who I think give it the legs that it's got. While you've got these 2 damaged men who are trying to keep up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like all of the decisions are made by the women in this book. The big fight scenes and everything. It's always the women. And that wasn't necessarily a conscious thing. Somebody told me once that 70% of readers are female, and I don't think that's true. I think it's close to 90% female. It's unbelievable the amount. It's night and day, the amount of men compared to the amount of women who read books.
Yeah, I've read the statistic too.
Yeah, I think it's like, if you go on Goodreads and you look at the people who post books, it's all women. I tell you, it's fantastic. I love it.
Yeah, unless you're in the horror genre. I will say that, I think that there's like a really good balance. It used to be like really, a lot of men reviewing it and talking about it, and all the podcasts were men sitting around talking about horror. But I think in the last like 3 years or so, there's just been this like big insurgence of women voices talking about it, writing about it,
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And it's so great. It's so great to see. And certainly the reception I've got from Lola it's been, I would say, my readership on this book has been 90% female from what I've been able to see.
Yeah.
But I didn't set out to write the book, even though it is, a female-centric novel. I didn't set out to write it for women specifically. I wanted it to be enjoyed by everybody, first and foremost myself. And I wanted it to be a book the kind of book that I would love to pick up and read. That was my goal. But yeah, so it turned into this novel with these 2 damaged men and these 3 incredibly brilliant women, and yeah, and I was surprised by that. I was surprised that the women actually, in this book, really showed, a strength, while the men were just always trying to catch up along the way, because it just wasn't something I was just trying to tell a story. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, like you said, the characters sometimes tell their own story, like you said
Exactly, that's what it
with
was, and
Westlake. Yeah,
they rose to the occasion. I was very proud of them, and I still am.
that's really cool. I do have a quick question about marketing this book. Was it difficult because of the pandemic, or like how are you finding that to be?
I mean, yeah, everything's changed. I wasn't able to do any, live events. Wasn't able to go out and sell the book, in bookstores. I've always done that before for books. Had a launch and hit 3 or 4 different bookstores. Um, yeah, and people aren't walking into bookstores with the same kind of frequency that they used to, which has definitely been problematic, I would say. So most of the marketing has been, fixated, I think, on online ventures. There was a lot of Instagram um, action.
Yeah,
Definitely hit the marketing people at William Morrow definitely hit Instagram hard, and that was nice to see. But yeah, it hasn't been easy to launch a book during a pandemic, but
yeah.
we'll see. The paperback is out later in the year. It's out in November, and hopefully we'll have all been vaccinated, and things will be largely back to normal by then. So, maybe the paperback will sort of have a little bit more of a successful showing in stores and things.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm definitely talking about it. I will be reviewing it. So look for my review on Cemetery Dance. That will be
Yay!
coming out very soon.
You're awesome.
Also, just because we have 5 or 10 minutes or so, I did want to talk about what you are currently working on so that fans can look forward to what you
Yeah.
have going on. I did see a little bit of a cat out of the bag tweet from you the other day, going back and forth between you and Joe Hill. And as we all know, Hill House Comics has kind of been going strong. So, what was that all about?
Well, I knew you were going to ask. Well, I didn't let it out. I didn't let it out of the bag.
No, he did. And then you were like, well, I don't think Joe Hill will let me say too much. It's like, who's afraid of Joe Hill? I'm not that guy. I'm not afraid of Joe Hill.
Yeah. Well, obviously, nothing has been signed. But it looks at this point like there's going to be a second season of Hill House Comics, which Joe curated last year. I think it came out. Some fantastic comics, Basketball Full of Heads, which Joe wrote himself. The Dollhouse was one. Yeah, just a really great series, and it was successful. And I think DC have had a bit of a shuffle around recently in terms of editors and and how they're going to proceed moving forward. And it didn't seem like anything was going to happen for a little while, but I think the pieces have been put into place. I used to think, because, like I said, nothing has been signed yet. But as of this moment, I think season 2 of Hill House Comics looks pretty good. And if it does go ahead, then I am slated to write a comic for it. So stay tuned. I'm not going to say which one yet.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
But
you've done that before, right? Did you write Sleeping Beauties?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's based on the Stephen King book, and Owen King, who
Yeah.
wrote it with his son. God, that was a hard job. It was fun. That's not a job you turn down, right? With that,
Right.
a Stephen King and an Owen King book. It was fun, but it was very hard because it's a 700-page novel that's full of characters, and I had to get it down to a 200-page comic.
Wow.
And it was just going through the book and taking the most story relevant scenes and condensing everything. And one of the criticisms, or probably the most prevalent criticism that the comics was, it's been largely well received, but there were people have have not loved it universally. And one of the things is, oh, there's too many characters in this comic. It's hard to keep up. And I like, well, I cut like 75% of the characters
Yeah, it has
out
a
of
huge
this.
cast list.
Yeah, like you go, this is nothing. This is just a few of the main players. Trust me, go read the book if you want a lot of characters. But
Yeah.
it was such a big undertaking that I honestly I was glad to get through it, and it was a real pleasure to write. But it was a challenge. It was in so many ways a challenge.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean,
Owen's thrilled with it. Stephen King is thrilled with it.
yeah.
The fans of the book, those who have read the book, seem to be thrilled with it. So mission accomplished, I say.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was going to say, is it's just reaching another audience, another group of readers. Like, my son is 15 and he doesn't read novels, but I mean, he reads the shit out of graphic novels.
Right,
So
right, yeah.
anything that gets a kid with their nose in some pages is like fine with me.
Absolutely, 100%. Couldn't agree more. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's definitely it reads like a typical sort of Stephen King book. So for anybody who's familiar with his type of work, then they'll definitely find something here that they can just jump right into and feel at home with. It was definitely a blast to write. Yeah.
Yeah, and so are you working on something currently then? Since that's just on the burner.
Yeah. We've got obviously the comic thing with Joe hasn't happened yet. We're still waiting for final word on that, but hopefully
yeah.
And what I'm working on now is edits on the next novel from William Morrow, which should be out, I think, February or March of next year. I did have a title. The title was Higher Ground, like the Stevie Wonder song.
Yeah.
I love that song.
I love that song too.
Yeah. Unfortunately, my editor didn't love that title. So she's like, you gotta think of a better title. And I'm like, man, I love that title.
Oh, I bet titles are hard.
And it's not so much that I don't want to like lose that title. It's I spent probably 6 months thinking of titles, and then this, I heard the song and I was like, oh my god, that's perfect, and it felt so right.
Yeah.
And so now I've got to go back and like I can't think of anything right now that's what it's going to be called, but hopefully something I'll get inspired. So I just feel like I'm going to send the book out, like to put it on Twitter, like, who wants to read my book? And if you come up with a title, I'll give you $100.
Well, I will. Well, I mean, one of the best. Okay, this is just a weird little reader thing, but I think it's really fun when you can read through a novel and then you see the title in the book somewhere. Like a character says something, or there's some kind of reference to the title, and I always like make a note of it either on my Kindle or
right.
In my review notes, and just be like, oh, there it is. It's like a fun little Easter egg. So maybe there's some kind of reoccurring thing or something someone says that's going to be like ding ding ding.
Yeah, I'm editing it right now, and going through it and thinking maybe the title will just jump out at me.
Yeah.
I honestly, I usually have problems with titles. Chris Golden, a few people have read this book, my usual readers, and Chris was the only one who came back at me and said, man, you suck at titles.
Oh my god, that's fun.
He didn't mix his words.
Yeah.
Everybody else, except for my editor, even my agent, said, hey, the title's great, don't listen to Chris Golden, he doesn't know what he's talking about. Yeah. But it turns out that Chris does know what he's talking about because my editor agreed with him. So
yeah.
Chris was right and everybody else was
wrong. Point for Chris.
Point for Golden, yeah.
Yeah.
For Golden on that one. But yeah, he says I suck at titles, and I don't know if I do. Like, maybe I do. But anyway, yeah, it's I can't tell you what it's called, but it's another action thriller. It's set in Hollywood, and it's about this young woman who moves to Los Angeles, chasing her dreams, her ambitions, trying to get her life back together, and she meets two very different men, and one is a wannabe Viking drug dealer named Johann Fly, and the other one is a former actor, washed up guy in his 40s. He's called Isaac Kingsley, and he's most famous for being accused of killing his wife. He protests, he says, he claims his innocence, and so this our main protagonist falls in with these two men who both may be very dangerous. We'll see. You'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, we have to tune in a year.
It's another straight thriller. So again, there's no supernatural element or anything like that. But and again, it was fantastic, fun writing the book, and it was just great to spend time with Isaac and Johann and Kitty, who's the female character in the book, and I enjoyed it. I think it's a good one.
Yeah, that sounds really fun. I mean, thrillers are always fun, especially for people who read a lot of horror and just kind of want to cleanse it, cleanse the palate a little bit and jump into something that, is either more fast paced or doesn't have as much gore and monsters and stuff like that.
Yeah, so, I agree. And I kind of went through a phase not so long ago where I was just horrored out. I grew up reading horror stories, writing horror stories, and I got to a point, shortly after we had kids, where I just couldn't read any more horror, and I didn't, even I wasn't reading books from friends even, and I just couldn't. I just couldn't. Movies, I wasn't watching any, not because I didn't like it, but just because I wasn't in the mood. And I'm slowly coming back around to jumping back into horror again. I'm actually reading a book at the moment, and I'm really enjoying it. And I'm reading it for a blurb by Ronald Malfi.
Oh, nice.
He's a great guy, and he's a fantastic author. And
that Come Away With Me?
It's cool. Yeah, is it called Come With Me, or Come Away With Me, or something?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
It's great. Yeah, and it's definitely rekindling my love and fascination with horror. So it's I do know what you mean, where when you can have too much. You're mother horror, like you can never have too much horror.
Never, no.
Never give me more.
Yeah.
But I'm not mother horror. I'm not even I'm not even baby horror. Sometimes I get too much, and it's nice that I can jump into thrillers, and I love a lot of literary fiction as well, and that's my go-to place as well. So, but horror feels like home, I guess. It feels like the place I come back to where I'm familiar with how everything feels and how everything it looks, and it's great now that a lot of these writers that I'm reading in the horror field are people I know personally and people I've met, and it gives you a different perspective on the work for sure.
That's awesome. Yeah, definitely. Like if any horror fans out there are looking for a nice little reprieve and venture into something a little bit more warm-hearted, you could read Westlake Soul. If you're looking for some cult horror that has to deal with some coming of age themes, you could read Halcyon. And then if you're just looking for a straight good old-fashioned gun-toting woman book, you could read LOLA on Fire. But Rio, I just want to thank you so much for taking time today to sit with me and chat with me. It was so good to finally get to have FaceTime with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it.
After however many years it's been.
I know,
2 or 3 years. Yeah. So it was really good.
And I look forward to meeting you in person and at a convention someday. And that would be great.
For sure.
And thank you so much. And again, thank you to everybody within Nightworms and the horror community for being so supportive over the years. It's a great crowd. It's the kindest people you'll ever want to meet, and I'm very grateful to them.
Thank you so much for saying that. Yeah, thank you.
The queen of them all.
Stop.
The mother of them all.
Thank you, baby horror.
I'll take it. I'll take it.
Well, on that note, we're going to say goodbye to the Nightworms fans. And thanks for tuning in and watching this interview, you guys. Good to see you, Rio.
You too. Thank you so much.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.